What's up, horror fan? Welcome back to the channel. So today we are giving our review, our response, our summary for Dexter Original Sin episode 4 that came out this past Friday. I watched it, had to take a little bit of time to digest what was happening, especially coming off of episode 3 into episode 4. I will say episode 4 did not play out the way I was expecting it to play out, especially after we saw what I believe were Dexter's first mistakes thus far in this series, but many believe his first mistakes took place in episode 4, and we'll cover off on what everyone's saying that mistake is. But again, I think his first mistakes happened at the end of episode 3 when he was taking Tony's body that he kind of cut up a bit, put it down into Alligator Alley. And again, we saw one of the arms or hands pop up out of the water as Dexter left, which is where we did see one of Tony's rings. And we also saw Dexter toss the nurse's earrings that he kept as a trophy, which was his first victim, into the water as well. And you may recall me saying this before during our previous reviews, and it was even mentioned in the episode after that kill happened. Michael C. Hall was doing the narrative and said that when he initially took those earrings as a trophy, he would come to regret it. Now, I'm not sure if the regret was that Deb found them, gave them to Sophia, and then Dexter had to work to get them back. And obviously then Harry found out that they were trophies and then told Dexter to get rid of them, threw them in the water, and he feels that that's the end of it. I still think, though, that those earrings are going to get found along with Tony's arm with the pinky ring, and they're going to identify that that is Tony. They're going to search that water, they may find the earrings, and they're going to be able to somehow link those back to the nurse. I think those are the pivotal mistakes that this Dexter character has made thus far in the prequel. Again, not many people believe that those were his first mistakes, that the first mistake happens in this episode 4. So as we get into episode 4, I'm still pretty I'm not really sold on this prequel yet. I felt it was picking up a bit in episode 3, and then it felt like in episode 4 it just kind of took a step back for me. It feels like now we're just stumbling along just to get through this prequel, this particular series, to get us back to the events at the end of Dexter New Blood, and then just really move right into Dexter Resurrection in June 2025. So thus far, I'm not feeling like this prequel is really even necessary. A lot of what we know about Dexter's history, we saw in flashbacks, that even with Michael C. Hall supposedly playing a younger version of himself in those flashbacks with Harry in the original series. So a lot of this is, we already know this information. I feel the information we do know about that was just word of mouth, but we're actually seeing it play out, is Harry and Laura's story. And I've said this before, Christian Slater, who plays Harry, we're just seeing much more of flashbacks for that character versus anything in the present time. And in this episode, we saw that again. Harry had a flashback where Laura had to go on this particular task. Since she is now a CI, she didn't have a babysitter. Harry decided to stay behind, babysit both Brian and Dexter, and his partner and Laura went off to take care of what they needed to take care of. Now, in this flashback, I think this is where we do see, though, where Brian does have these characteristics of not being so at ease, and he does have some problems. We find that he's pulling the tails off of lizards, so he doesn't seem to have very much sympathy, or he doesn't have a sympathetic bone in his body at this point. And when we see it does bother Dexter. Dexter seems to be very sympathetic of what's happening. They have this little funeral for the lizard that he found that was dead. But this also gives Harry a glimpse very early on into both Brian and Dexter. And this might be why when Harry does come across Dexter in the shipping container, that he doesn't adopt Brian as well. He just adopts Dexter because he kind of already knew Brian has some tendencies, has some problems that Dexter wasn't showing, but obviously Dexter would show later on, which is why we even have the series and why we even have this prequel. Now, the overarching story that we've talked about is about this child named Jimmy. Jimmy is the son of a judge who was kidnapped. Now, the way this episode starts off is Jimmy has been retired. They find him hanging from a bridge. He is no longer to be, and now they have to try to find the killer. That was a bit of a surprise to me. I thought that Jimmy would have survived throughout at least more than 3/4 of this particular series, maybe then would have been killed off, maybe would have been found, and then they eventually find the kidnapper. Now they're strictly just looking for a killer. And the fact that it is a child that has been retired, it has stirred up Dexter even more. After he sees the body, he has a hard time with it. He has a hard time seeing this child that's gone through this. And it just ramps his inner monster, his dark passenger even more, and feels he needs to take action. And that's where we lead off into, I feel, are still the side stories, which is unfortunate because, again, this is a Dexter prequel. You would think Dexter would be the focal point. I think now he might be the focal point, but thus far it's felt like the Jimmy being kidnapped, the flashbacks for Harry, Deborah acting out while she's in high school, they're trying to make those more focal points, and now it seems like Dexter isn't. Now that might change based on what's happening here. Dexter does some research on a former hitman, or supposedly former hitman, named Mad Dog. He does some research at Miami Metro PD to get some information. True Dexter style, like we've seen many times, he approaches his soon-to-be victim, gives a fake name, tries to get some information off of him. He does get the individual's address, tries to get some information while doing a B&E at the residence. Charters the boat, thinking he's going to be chartering this boat by himself in order to take out this former hitman named Mad Dog. Come to find out, there's another family that's also chartering Mad Dog's boat as well. So that kind of puts a little ripple in the waters for Dexter, so to speak. And then we come to, I feel that an end where we get more flashbacks of Harry and Laura, and we see for the first time the signs of Harry and Laura hooking up. And I see that playing out because we do know from the original series that Harry and Laura do have an affair at some point. But I don't know if you really want to call it an affair because his wife is already passed. Harry's wife is already passed. So he technically is single. So, is it really an affair? Is it really not? Now, we know Deborah sees it that way. Dexter was very impartial in the original series, but does it really matter at this point? I don't think it does. Again, I just feel like they're just telling us the story again more visually than we got verbally in the original series. Now, at the end of this episode, we come to where, again, true Dexter fashion, he's captured Mad Dog. He has him subdued, knocked out. But as he's putting up the pictures of all the victims, which is the first time we're seeing that happen in this prequel series, like we did in the original series, Dexter is hanging up pictures of Mad Dog's victims and is going to show them to him. But Mad Dog comes to, and he wasn't fully tied down. And here we are again in a scuffle. Third victim Dexter has had in this series, third scuffle he's been in. We have yet to see anything to the perspective of him having a way to already have them subdued, like we did with the tranquilizer in the original series. He's pretty much either fighting them, choking them out to render them unconscious. But Mad Dog comes to, puts up a big fight, obviously can identify Dexter, and escapes the home. He escapes his house and starts running down the street. Dexter gives chase, and Dexter's pretty far behind, not being able to keep up with him. Next thing you know, Mad Dog is running what appears to be a four-way cross, and didn't look both ways because then he got hit by a car. Dexter sees this, and the episode ends. Now, many people believe this is the first mistake that Dexter's made in this series so far. And as we've already covered, I don't think it is. I think this is Dexter's third mistake he's made thus far. And now we're going to probably spend the next episode or two. This is going to be investigated. Harry knows that Dexter was going after Mad Dog. Now Harry knows that Dexter didn't take care of Mad Dog. Mad Dog was hit by another person in their car. Now you have a witness. Now you have to figure out how are you going to explain why this individual is running down the street half naked with handcuffs on and then was hit by a car. Now his dad is either going to have to figure out how do we cover this up? How do we spin this story to look like it was something other than it was, meaning Dexter trying to kill him? And then those two are going to have to work it out. And I'm sure there's going to be some battle between Harry and Dexter as to, the code, the rules, trying to make sure you don't get found out. So again, I think this is Dexter's third mistake, but 4 episodes in, I'm not fully sold on why we even need this prequel series. Again, much of what's being shown to us, we already knew either through original flashbacks or through verbal talkovers by Michael C. Hall, and even with Dexter being an adult and the vision of Harry there talking to him covered some of this stuff as well. So we still have a little bit ways to go for this series. Hopefully it takes a better turn, at least a better turn for me. This will be a one and done viewing for me. I won't ever come back to this series again. I don't feel there's a need for me to come back to the series. Much of what this information is, again, can be found out in the original Dexter series that was released. And as far as the other characters go, they were very non-existent, meaning like Batista, Masuka. LaGuerta was here a little bit, but the other two were very non-existent in this episode. So I don't know if we only saw them the first few just to know that they exist during this time period of Dexter first joining Miami Metro, or if they're going to play some other pivotal roles towards the later half and the end of this series. But they weren't here in episode 4. Again, LaGuerta was only here for a very short time, and rightfully so. They're going to be focusing on Dexter. It is a Dexter prequel series. But even then, it doesn't necessarily feel like a Dexter prequel series when so much is trying to be sold on showing you the trials that Deborah's going through as far as still in high school, and all these flashbacks that we see continuously from Harry and trying to tell us the Harry and Laura story. So that's our review. That's our summary. I would give it, out of 5, I'm giving this episode a 2.5 to a 3. It's just an average episode for me. Nothing too exciting. Nothing that's, again, blowing me away with this prequel series thus far. If you are, again, though, if you are a Dexter fan, you enjoyed the original series, you enjoyed New Blood, I would still recommend checking this out. You might like it. As I've mentioned before, I'm a fan of the original series. New Blood, I didn't feel was very necessary. This prequel series, I don't feel is necessary. And until we see what really Dexter Resurrection is going to be about, it's hard to say whether or not that's necessary. Depending upon what that story is, how many episodes it's going to be, we have no idea. It's still under lock and key. So let us know down in the comment section what you thought about episode 4. If you've seen it, if you haven't seen it, check it out. You might like it, but we're giving it a 2.5 to a 3 out of a 5. So we will come back to you next week after we review episode 5 that still hasn't released yet, which should be out later this week. So we'll give our review over the weekend coming up. And I just want to give a big thank you out to all the new subscribers to the channel. It is greatly appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It definitely helps us out a lot. And drop a comment in the comment section. Otherwise, we will see you at the next one. Peace.